You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm the president and founder of the California Rock Art Foundation. And what we do is we identify, evaluate, manage, and conserve rock art both in Alta California and in Baja California. We conduct field trips, we have trainings, exercise, we do research, and in every way possible, we try to preserve, protect, and coordinate treasures of Alta and Baja California rock art, of which there are many and diverse. We also work closely with Native Americans and partner with them to recognize and protect sacred sites. So for more info about the fabulous California Rock Art Foundation, you can go to carockart.org. Also, I'm open to give me a call, 805-312-2261. We would welcome sponsorship or underwriting, helping us to defray the costs of our podcasts, and also membership in California Rock Art Foundation. And of course, donations, since we are a 501c3 nonprofit scientific and educational corporation. God bless everyone out there in podcast land.
You're listening to the Rock Art Podcast. Join us every week for fascinating tales of rock art, adventure, and archaeology. Find our contact info in the show notes and send us your suggestions.
Hey out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is your host for episode 71 of the Rock Art Podcast, Dr. Alan Garfinkel. You're going to hear from Trudy Angell. She is head of the group that leads us down into Baja California, the Grand Canyon of Mexico. Welcome out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel, and we're revisiting a remarkable topic that we've tried at various times to begin to scratch the surface per se, and that's dealing with some of the largest and most remarkable prehistoric paintings in the world, just to the south of us, out of California, in Baja California. They sometimes call it the Grand Canyon of Mexico, on the peninsula in the Sierra de San Francisco. And we're honored and blessed to have Trudy Angell, who has been saddling south and running tours and spending a remarkable amount of her lifetime intimately connecting with the land, the landscape, and its tremendous treasures. Trudy, are you there?
I am here, and thank you, Alan, and good to be back again.
Well, God bless you. It's so exciting to have you. Well, I guess the California Rock Art Foundation is going to have a few tours with you, Trudy, and this is going to be rather interesting. I hadn't anticipated having the number or character of these tours, but it sounds like they've been well received. And certainly, why don't you give us a little word picture, some snapshots about some of the upcoming tours?
So far, a few people have traveled with us from California Rock Art Foundation over the years. And the first was an adventure with Alan and our friend Eve Ewing down into we did a big long loop trip and also a trip with the folks out from England as well.
From the Bradshaw Foundation, one of the most well-known and prestigious rock art research platforms, digital platforms in the world. And God bless them. That was exciting.
Yeah. So over our trajectory of working with CRAF and combining different tours, it's been really fun. We've taken CRAF groups into a very remote area, into Parral Canyon to see Serpiente Cave, and then down into the Santa Teresa Rock Art Complex down in Santa Teresa Canyon in the heart of the Sierra de San Francisco. And so this time, Ryan Gerstner and also Christine Grimaldi, the executive director of CRAF, and some others who have been on some of our previous trips are all ready to ride into the small rancheria area of San Gregorio in early March. So we have 4 trips kind of back to back. And there was so much enthusiasm and has been so much enthusiasm and continues to be for these trips. And so we just kept adding and adding until we have now 4 trips in the month of March. And I am really looking forward to heading into the canyon for the very last trip of our craft season, because Eric Ritter is going to be joining us on that one. And I've heard so many things from you and Eve Ewing and other people over the years, and of course, reading some of his rock art papers.
Well, Dr. Eric Ritter got his PhD on studies, archaeology and prehistory and rock art on Baja. And I was on one of his earliest, forays out there when I volunteered as a youngster, a little baby archaeologist. And, that was the first time I was in Mexico and first time I was in Baja. And I was smitten. I was just taken aback by the remarkable nature of the adventure, the beauty, and everything about it. And so Eric has continued throughout his lifetime, probably about 40 years or more of extensive research, publications, and continued studies on the indigenous people, the ethnography, the archaeology, and certainly the rock art as well. He is probably considered one of the foremost researchers and scholars on Baja in the world. So you've got a treasure, an absolute treasure at your fingertips. And he's also a very nice guy.
Yeah, I've heard many things that he and his wife are coming, and also we have a few other spaces that are filled on that trip already. But that is one of the trips, and it is from March 26th as the arrival date in Loreto until April 2nd as the departure date from Loreto again. And we'll be doing 4 days in Cañón Santa Teresa, with the Cueva La Pintada, Cueva de las Flechas, and several other pretty well-known rock art sites in that area that we'll be visiting. So the weather has been perfect to run tours. We had a little bit of rain on one trip last week, but just enough, a few hours to make the canyon look beautiful, and it's always gorgeous in that canyon.
It's a wondrous time of year because of the weather and because of the beauty of the canyon, right?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to being on that trip as well. And there are other trips that both Ryan Gerstner will be representing craft on there, and then Christine Grimaldi. And we'll be doing one more trip out into the Sierra, to the northern part of the Sierra, into the San Gregorio Canyon, which has some very interesting sites. And then 2 trips we have a space on one of the trips into the Santa Teresa Canyon on March 18 to 25.
Fantastic.
18 to 25, or excuse me, 12 to 19. We'll have a trip the 12th to the 19th of March going into Santa Teresa Canyon. Another one, the 18th to the 25th of March, going into the San Gregorio Canyon to the north. And then again, the final trip of the season with Eric Ritter will be on the 26th of March until April 2nd. Fantastic. And so people can contact me at Tour Loreto, that's TOURLORETO, at AOL.com in order to see about signing up for these last few remaining spaces that are available on the craft trips this spring.
Fantastic. Well, that's rather remarkable. We've talked a little bit about the Great Mural rock art, but I think on this particular opportunity, I'd like to talk about maybe a few things about what we know about the paintings and the native people, how we know a little bit about them. One of the things that is very helpful in terms of knowledge of this particular piece of geography is that the fathers were there rather early, meaning these missionaries, and also they were interested in describing and characterizing the indigenous people in a rather objective way. And there were linguistic studies that were done of the native people. And one of the things we learned was that there is an unbroken line of related languages called Cochimi or Cochimi. And that exists in the Central Baja Peninsula, which is in fact coterminous or correlated, synchronous with this Great Mural rock art. For that reason, and because it appears to be of great time depth, we believe that the ancestors of the indigenous people, known as the Cochimi, were in fact the likely artisans of these remarkable paintings. Have you reflected and thought about that? Has that been something that you've understood over the years?
Yeah, that's one of the theories. There are writings that discuss that it was that the Cochimi themselves, when the missionaries came into the area, they actually claimed that they did not do those paintings. There were other ancestors before them. But surely the traditions and the rituals of the Cochimi that has been documented, that was documented by Miguel del Barco in the area of Loreto, and others, have some of the same characteristics of the Cochimi rituals of the time. So the paintings of the half black and half red and human figures. And these figures that are in the canyons and on these rock faces are just amazing. You can likely not find very many places where there's such a high concentration of this animation in the rock art and human size, greater than human size, greater than the animal size figures running across the walls of the cave. And it's so stylized. It's completely stylized in the whole Sierra de San Francisco. Just very interesting concepts of who might have done that artwork, particularly in this one concentrated area.
Yes, and you're exactly right in terms of looking at the stylization and the subject matter and how that all works. One of the things I learned from Eve Ewing, who is one of my mentors when it comes to understanding the rock art of Baja. Eve is a remarkable published author. She also did her own documentary film on the indigenous people, and mainly about the people that were the cowboys, cowboys and the other individuals who lived down there and their lives. But what she has consistently talked about is the life of the paintings, the movement of the paintings, and the intimate embrace of the natural world and the landscape by the imagery. She's been down into this area. She's, I think, in the area of like 85 years of age. She said she's been going down into this Sierra de San Francisco 50 years, about twice a year, on the mulas with the burros and tether, and consistently had a never-ending or endlessly engaging sort of romance with these remarkable paintings. And Eve Ewing is just a wonder. What a treasure, right?
Yeah, she's amazing. And her friendship with Eleni Moore, who spent many, many summers away from her. She used to teach art in Southern California in one of the universities, one of the colleges. And her passion for laying on her back in a cave in the months of hot summer, just to capture in her own artistic ways the scale of art that's in these mountain ranges. And she's done a great tribute to capturing some of the movement and to scale. Just some great stuff. And so I was introduced to Eleni via Eve, and those two women are forces of nature for being some people who just so appreciate what those hidden canyons have captured and held for us. And so another woman who has been a great resource and who was the main person to be able to put into existence the ability to have the visitation of this art in the canyon, and to have it be so protected and to have it become a World Heritage Site. And that would be Lucero Gutierrez, who lives in Los Cabos and has made her life work has been to protect the rock art in these canyons. And she's done an amazing job working with the local people, the vaqueros, the families, to make it be a true World Heritage existence of a place in the world that is so special that the patrimony of this ranchero culture has benefited by. We use the local cowboys and their burros and their mules to ride into the canyons. They take care of us on the trail. They watch out for us. They take us to the sites. And in some of the more remote areas, which they have labeled as level 3, and that would be in San Gregorio, the San Gregorio visitation, we also have a INA, or Department of History and Anthropology, custodian along with us, just as a little extra protection. There are no signage and no walkways to protect the understory of the caves, and so that requires an extra level of attention from the Department of History and Anthropology. So there's the canyon, which is Santa Teresa, that has walkways and signage, and the trails are kept up. But let me tell you, and as you know, Alan, you've been on some of those trails. They are rocky and slippery, so we do want to make sure that people are aware of that ahead of time. It's a steep, deep canyon, and although there are some creature comforts where we camp in the bottom of the canyon and one of the camps, and if we get to move down canyon to the wilderness camp, it is rocky, and so you are going to scramble to get up to some of the sites, but we always do have our vaquero guides along to help us.
And the vaqueros helped me. They drug me up. I was the I was the one that needed personal attention, and they were kind enough to get me up there to see those fabulous, fabulous images.
Yeah, we got you there.
Well, we just went through the first segment, just rather remarkable. And in this next segment, I think we'll begin delving a little deeper into the subject matter and the characterization of what we know about these remarkable paintings. See you in the flip-flop, gang.
Looking to expand your knowledge of X-rays and imaging in the archaeology field? Then check out An Introduction to Paleoradiography, a short online course offering professional training for archaeologists and affiliated disciplines. Created by archaeologist, radiographer, and lecturer James Elliott, the content of this course is based upon his research and teaching experience in higher education. It is approved by the Register of Professional Archaeologists and the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists as 4 hours of training. So don't miss out on this exciting opportunity for professional and personal development. For more information on pricing and course structure, visit paleoimaging.com. That's PALEO imaging.com, and check out the link in the show notes.
Welcome back to the Rock Art Podcast, episode 71. And we're in segment 2. We're graced and honored and blessed to have Trudy Angell, who's been riding the ropes and reins and moving into Baja California for nigh on 25 years and having a fabulous time at it. Trudy, why don't you share a bit about the adventure and nature of riding the trails into the Grand Canyon of Mexico, into the Sierra de San Francisco?
Okay. Often I take people into the mountains. People want to sign up and see the rock art in this amazing, spectacular World Heritage rock art, Great Mural rock art. And when they come out of the canyon, beyond even the majestic mural art, they're coming out of the canyon saying, wow, the cowboys, those vaqueros, the mules, the trails, the canyon, the scenery.
The burros, everything.
Yeah, they just can't believe the kind of other reality worldview that these people have who live out there in the backcountry, their skills and their abilities. And those guys who take us down into the canyons are just super amazing. They're muleteers. They know how to pack a donkey. We've even packed guitars and ukuleles on the top of the carga, and they're very gentle with those. They just are so knowledgeable.
Yeah. So the way I've described it is, first of all, you're going into a place that there, in essence, are no roads for motor vehicles. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct. So we drive from Loreto up to San Ignacio, the small village of San Ignacio. And the following day, we drive up into the beautiful escarpments of the Sierra San Francisco. And then you get to meet your mules meet your cowboy guides and the donkeys that do all the work for us, that carry the loads down into the canyon. So it's an otherworldly kind of an experience. You're going to get a huge cultural hit with coming on one of these trips, and just a huge respect for how these people live in the outback and how they've integrated us into their lifestyle. It's really wonderful.
So you get on the back of a mule. It's a mula or a mulo, but I think many of the time they are they female mostly or no? The mulas?
No, there are female mules and male mules. And those male mules, you know the word macho? ¿Quién es más macho?
Yes.
Well, macho is actually just the word for male, M-A-L-E. But the male mules are called machos and the female mules are called mulas.
I did not know that. Okay. Interesting. So when I experienced this, I was on the back of a mula, and the trail is about as wide as my arm. Am I correct, or is it wider? How wide is it?
Oh, come on. It's wider. It just seemed like that.
It just seemed like that. So, but somehow these mules can navigate this trail tremendously, and they are confident and have a good sense of it. Now, we go from the rim of the canyon and descend. How far, how fast?
Well, it's about 1,500 feet down to the first camp on day one. And if you've been into the Grand Canyon on muleback, it's rockier than that. And there are some places, Alan, I do give you credit there. Yes, you're standing at the edge of a precipice and you're looking down. But you know what? I have a favorite saying. I say, trust your mule's feet. Those mules don't want to roll down that canyon wall, and they don't want to take you with them. So actually, they're the perfect animal for this backcountry of Baja, where it's so rocky and so steep. Because they're a cross between a donkey and a horse, they're good and large, so you're not dragging your feet, of course. But they're sturdy, but they have the donkey trait of being super, super well balanced on rocky trails.
Yes, and I can assure my colleagues and the visitors and participants in these tours that those mules are sort of, our lifeblood, and it's rather remarkable to be on the back of a mule on these trails going through these deserts. Now, when we say deserts, sometimes we think about the California deserts or some of the other deserts that don't have much in the way of vegetation. That's not the way that the Baja experience is it?
No, not in the Sierra San Francisco. It's one of the most gorgeous mountain ranges because you're starting out at the top of the mesas where there's a lot of wide open space, but you have these deep, steep canyons, and we drop down into those canyons. And so they have water courses through them, pools of water, beautiful palm trees. There's mesquite, of course, and there are some very unique endemic plants up in the higher country as well. And so you really get an experience that it is cultural and ethnobotany. We can teach a little bit of that along the trail as well. And people with interest in the ethnobotany are really surprised to hear and understand how the indigenous people lived without agriculture and without architecture, basically. The Cochini in that area.
So as we continue to ride on the mulas and the male mules as well.
Machos.
The machos. We descend the canyon, and then we get down to the bottoms, and we ride along those water courses for a while. And then we have to go up the side of the canyon again, don't we?
Right. So most of the time, on a 4-day trip, let's say, 4 days and 3 nights in the canyon, you're camping, and we're in a flat camp spot in the bottom of the canyon. But then to get up to the rock art locations, then there's some trails and scrambles up some sides of the canyon. But there are trails. And so most of the time people say, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this because I can't ride a mule all day. We don't actually ride the mules all day. The first day is like 3 hours into the canyon, and then we might ride for an hour and a half down to where we tie the mules and then hike up to some of the rock art sites, Cueva Pintada, Cueva de las Flechas, and then ride back to camp. So they're short.
It's rather amazing. And the places where the rock art is are in these rock shelters that are often on the rim rocks, just below the rim rocks. And they are made of volcanic tuff. And you would never have guessed that these are the canvases for these remarkable many-colored paintings, but they are. And the geology plays a part in the story of each painting. And it was Eve Ewing that taught me this, and she's one of the pioneers in understanding sort of the geological nature of how these canvases of volcanic rock shelters serve as sort of the homes for these remarkable archaeological sites and paintings. Maybe you can say a few things about that.
Yes, it's been fun to travel with Eve over the years to some of her favorite sites. And she's always pointing out how the animals are moving in a certain background of the rock, how they're running straight up a crack in the fissure in the face of the rock overhang. And she does a great job of determining what the symbolism might be in that particular painting in a particular cave, and because of the structure of the rock wall. Yeah.
And you can see as you study that canvas, that rock canvas, that volcanic interface, that some of the major fissures, the major cracks of where the water will run become sort of the central conduits for the movements of this panoply of animals that are rushing at a death pace out of that particular panel. And it is amazing to see the movement and flurry and vitality of the animals in counterpoint to the stability and stationary nature of the human figures that exist. They call them static figures. They are full frontal and often have their hands towards the sky in an adherent posture, I would argue. And the animals continue to move, yet the humankind, both men, women, and even children for that matter, appear to be in homage or prayer or some sort of a posture relating to almost a deification of the animal people, as it were, and perhaps relating to asking for their deities to provide them with a way to continue in the face of adversity. And one of those resources that they need most critically is water and rain.
Yeah, right. So the animals and the deer figures running up the cracks and bringing down the rain, I remember, was one of the papers that Eve Ewing wrote, and it has specifically to do with that concept of how the animals are going skyward and in praying for the rain to come down into their world because it's just such a necessary thing in those desert environments.
And it's so unpredictable. Is that correct? Whether they receive the rain or receive enough rain to produce a reasonable crop and be able to harvest the necessary fruit and seeds and have the animals that they need to live.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so all of those desert foods they are so reliant on those desert foods since they had no agriculture in their own culture at that time until the missionaries did arrive. And so that ancient art seems to reflect that.
Is that main food the one that's called the joyous food called pitaya? Am I correct? Is that the fruit of the cactus that they harvest?
Right. There were different fruits, cactus fruit that they would harvest in the summer times and in the fall. And then the seeds also, the pods from various plants. And one of the things that they harvested a lot were actually roots from various vines that grew in the canyons as well.
So they had a repertoire of foraging and harvesting certain plants. And then I guess the hunters would try to acquire either deer or I would presume bighorn sheep or other smaller game. But I think those were the major targets. Am I correct?
Yeah. And it's interesting to note that there have been no, or at least no place that I have been in the Sierra de San Francisco, do you see any particular pictographs of plant life? It's all animal, it's all game, it's all turtles and whales and pinnipeds, and then the deer and the pronghorn or bighorn sheep in the area. And those are the largest of the paintings on the walls and the ones that seem to have the most consistent movement going in one direction or another. So in different cave rock art sites, it's really interesting to see. Eve noted one time when we were in the San Gregorio area into the site that Harry Crosby named in the book, The Cave Paintings of Baja California, as just San Gregorio 1. Mm-hmm. And Eve noted that all of the deer figures in that cave are running up canyon. So she asked our cowboy guides what they might think about that. And when they put their minds to it, they said, well, when you're hunting, what you do when you're out there is to run the deer up canyon. And so we came up with that concept that this was an interesting site because all of the animals were running in one direction, and that was up canyon. So there was some kind of concept there of what that could mean as far as the storytelling in that painting.
Absolutely. Remarkable. Well, second segment. I think in the final one, we'll try to put a bow on it. See you guys on the flip-flop in the next segment. Hey, welcome back. This is your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel, with your Rock Art Podcast, number 71 in the third segment, final third. We've got Trudy Angell of Saddle and South talking about the fabulous Great Mural rock art of Baja California and the Sierra de San Francisco. Trudy, tell us a bit about this organization called INA and also the types of resources that potentially we could, in fact, connect with on the tours of this remarkable world-class phenomenon.
Okay. Well, the department called INAH, I-N-A-H, is Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia, so National Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico. And in the early 1990s, a woman named Lucero Gutierrez took it upon herself, single-handedly almost, to organize both the families in the ranches of the Sierra de San Francisco, because it is such a highly concentrated area and easy to protect. She took it upon herself to make this a World Heritage Site. And beyond the normal routes that people go to go see the World Heritage Rock Art. The most popular one is the Santa Teresa Canyon, which we'll visit twice in the month of March on the craft trips, and the San Gregorio area to the north of there, which we'll also visit twice during the craft trips this year. There are so many other trails and canyons and pieces of rock art that are rarely visited. On the southeastern side of the whole mountain range is the Santa Marta area. And so another very worthwhile visit into Serpiente Cave. And I'm sure Ryan and Christine and other representatives of craft will probably want to set up another trip into that area. But there are so many other routes that can be had into canyons to go visit beautiful petroglyph areas. There's a whole canyon to the northeast of the San Gregorio Ranch area that it takes another day and a half to ride to, and you can make a camp. There's plenty of water. There are tinajas in the canyon, which means holding tanks of water, and just a whole canyon to go exploring. It's like a treasure hunt just to go and find all of the beautiful petroglyphs in that area. There are other areas down farther from the site of the La Pintada and Flechas, the most visited area, that are rarely visited and go by the old mission site of San Pablo. And so often you might hear the Santa Teresa Canyon being referred to as San Pablo, and because the ranch called San Pablo is at the head of that watercourse, and the old mission site, the Rancho Santa Teresa is at the head of the canyon, and the mission site of San Pablo is at the bottom towards the mouth of that canyon. And so it gets two different names at times. And then there's a route that we do in sometimes on whole circle loop trips. And that would take, for a craft trip, it might end up being a super long one. It might be 12 days by the time you fly into Loreto and get ourselves up to the rock art area, do a loop trip for 8 days, and then come back. But one thing that happens is people often come down for these shorter 4-day, 3-night camping trips, see one canyon, and then they want to come back for more.
They're hooked.
Yeah. And there's just so much to explore. It could be a whole month. You could take a whole month riding mules.
Right. But the petroglyphs themselves are, in and of themselves, are remarkable, are they not?
Yeah,
because they sometimes have the similarities and differences with respect to the paintings, and those petroglyphs certainly go back even further in time than the paintings.
Right, exactly. And so you don't see a lot of the Great Mural of style of petroglyph in the Sierra de San Francisco. I've seen it in other parts around the peninsula, other places. It doesn't have much to do with that. It's more concentric circles. It's more, there's a beautiful rock, if you recall, near just down canyon from La Pintada, that is called Piedra de Chuy, because one of our favorite guides, who works for INA as a custodian now, discovered that as he was looking for a lost mule, and no one had ever come upon this beautiful rock with a beautiful, gorgeous patina on it, suggesting very, very ancient peckings into this rock, and it's a gorgeous sample of the petroglyph style in the range.
Well, what we found is when you see the desert varnished petroglyphs that are on basalt, and when you can see that varnish appear pretty much the same color as the glyphs themselves, they've been revarnished through the iron manganese coating, that we're talking about a time span not extensive in terms of we do know confidently when those who have the ability to sort of test and estimate the ages of those images, we're looking at 10,000 years of prehistory, which is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, it's very fun, very exciting, even on the loop trip that we've done into Parral Canyon, where the Serpiente site is on the southeastern part. We can also go up and around to the top of a mesa. And of course, it's near water holes where you're going to find the highest concentration, at least in this range, of the petroglyph art.
Right, because they'll be concentrated around the water sources and the natural tanks. Now, I understand that some of the people who live in this area actually serve as liaison protectors, or partly deal with or help out, and are compensated for that kind of relationship in terms of being an interface with the visitors. Am I correct?
Yeah, and INA has designed that, Lucero Gutierrez specifically, but the Department of History and Anthropology has designed two sides of the mountains, let's say the northwestern side where the Cueva Pintada and Cueva de las Flechas, the most visited level 2 piece of rock art. There are different levels, and so different guides on the guide roll in the Sierra de San Francisco are authorized to take people into different sites. So in order to make this spectacular rock art available to the general public as well, for people who can't really or really don't want to get on a mule and ride down into a canyon, you can visit one rock art site on the northwestern side near the village of San Francisco de la Sierra, and that would be Cueva del Raton. And
That's right.
So people, you can get there by bus or by local, not a bus per se, but a local taxi van kind of a situation. You can drive your own vehicle there, hire a local guide, sign in with the INA coordinator in the village of San Francisco, and then take just a short little day trip out to one site where it only requires you to go up a little flight of stairs. But it's protected, very well protected, because it is so accessible. It really necessitates that they actually put fences around those areas so that it won't be vandalized. And that's just a wonderful thing that has happened, to be able to have it be more accessible to most people. And then there's a beautiful site on the southeastern side in the Santa Marta area, which requires, from the town of San Ignacio in the central part of the heart of the peninsula, basically, you can access that by a couple of hour car ride, signing in with the custodian in the Santa Marta side of the canyon or the mountain range. And then local guides will take you there either by mule or on foot, and you can hike for a couple of hours to get up to an amazing site called El Palmarito. And so that's level 1. That's available to be able to go and visit some spectacular rock art without doing a camping trip, and to get there mostly on foot or by car. And then there's the level 2, where it's protected in the Santa Teresa Canyon, for instance, by having wooden walkways that have been built with railings and everything. So you can actually walk along Cueva La Pintada for 200 yards and admire all of the art in that site.
So really what the Mexican people have done, what Lucero has done and others, is make these paintings available to the general public in a way that protects them and yet allows them to be visited and appreciated. And this is in a way that is a little different from what we do domestically, even in the United States. They take it one step further, and they have provided almost a personalized connection to these images, to these sites, through those site stewards and through the protective nature and interactive nature of how well engineered and managed these particular sites are. It certainly is a wondrous way of managing these treasures, don't you think?
Yeah. And the cowboys, the vaqueros, their families are so hospitable. When you go into those areas, you actually sometimes ride past in San Gregorio. In the case of San Gregorio, they've built some amenities for us near the little garden campsite in the San Gregorio area. You get to camp in the orange grove, just down from the ranch, down the hill from the ranch, and with a little stream going through it. So it's a beautiful area. And the people at the ranch have always been very hospitable.
Amazing.
They do some great leather work at that ranch. So there's more history to be absorbed even beyond the rock art in the area. And definitely the people who live in that mountain range really do count on visitation to these sites as part of their economy, for sure.
Yeah, I could see that. So what's rather remarkable is we're seeing sort of this intimate dynamic between cultural resources, rock art sites, prehistory, anthropology, and the local people who are challenged yet collaborators and working with Aina and Lucero and others in terms of researching, protecting, and interpreting the sites. Justin Hyland, years ago, did his PhD dissertation on these sites, and he worked with Lucero in terms of publishing a number of syntheses about the Sierra de San Francisco and understanding Great Mural rock art. And it's been a wondrous collaboration, and I can see that from that kind of relationship, both from the American side and the Mexican side, there's been a tremendous interest. There's been several PhD dissertations come out of the study of the Great Mural rock art, and it's been quite revelatory, interesting, and adding to our understanding of really forager, hunter-gatherer cosmology, religion, and religious practices in a remarkable part of the world, and endlessly engaging, obviously, and one that has been very helpful to me to really begin to understand and appreciate this kind of relationship. Does that make sense, Trudy?
Yeah, and it's such a unique area with the cosmology and energetic side of things. I will tell you a little anecdote of my own. It was very interesting for me one time to have a friend of mine call me up one time and ask me, Trudy, what do you know about the area of San Ignacio and that area? Are you very familiar with that? I said, yeah, boy, do I know. I do know a lot. She said, well, this is interesting. There's going to be, do you know what grid lines are? And I said, well, not really. She said, well, they're the energetic lines that encircle the earth, and there are certain areas. And so I just need to tell you, I'm somehow drawn to this grid line number 17. Grid line number 17 tends to run straight north from San Ignacio, this area. So I'm wondering what you know about that. This grid line is called the Plumed Serpent.
Oh, my word.
And I said, that grid line actually runs through then a rock art site that has a serpent with deer horns. So, wow, what kind of energy? How did that happen? The Plumed Serpent grid line goes right basically through the Serpent Cave in the southeast side of that sierra. So it just opened up a whole new world of vision for me of how cosmic the understanding or the lack of understanding that we have of what the painters might have known or felt or understood energetically in a particular area. Very, very interesting when that little light bulb came on for me.
Absolutely. And We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the ancestors of the natives and those that were artisans who took the trouble to capture the cosmic sensibilities and bring them down to Earth so we could appreciate them. And with that, we're out of time. Thank you, Trudy.
Okay.
And thank you all listeners of the Rock Art Podcast. See you next week in a brand new show. See you on the flip-flop. Moolah. Ha!
Good job, Alan. You really learned that.
Thanks for listening to the Rock Art Podcast with Dr. Alan Garfinkel and Chris Webster. Find show notes and contact information at www.archpodnet.com/rockart. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing this podcast with your family and friends. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.